Welcome back to Lorehammer. Hey, I'm your host, Mark, and today is an orc episode, so everyone give me a nice little WAAAGH!
Wow.
Oh, okay. Well, you know, that was appropriate because honestly, this episode doesn't have a whole lot of them. We're talking about Krorks, which are very old school orcs. I don't know if they WAAAGhed necessarily back in the day as hard as they do now in some ways.
They were more sophisticated in their WAAAGHs.
Yeah, exactly. War.
Wow.
On you. Joining me today, we got Christian.
What's up, guys? Looking forward to delve into fellow degeneracy with everyone as we devolve with the Krorks.
Yeah. And we also got Brody. Hey.
How's it going?
Been a while since you've been on an episode, so good to have you back on.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute. I was way back on a Gazgul Thraka episode. You had me on like 2 orc episodes and I don't play orcs.
He's trying to imply that you should start.
Okay, I'll start. Okay, guys. It's fine.
I got one cat stuck outside in the rain howling at me. That's never happened before. That's so sad for him, but sucks to suck.
Now he's going to suffer the entire episode.
Yeah.
Daddy's working. Shut up.
I'm trying to pay the bill so you can eat your cat food, please. If you're interested in getting Lorehammer merch, you can go to Redbubble. You can buy t-shirts and support the show that way. Every t-shirt you buy gets a couple bucks in our pocket, so that's always nice. And you support the show through like spreading the word. You're walking down the street and someone's like, "Yo, you listen to Warhammer? I'm gonna fight you." It's typically how I get that encounter.
How that happens.
Yeah.
But you know what? That just means you can buy more shirts because you get a lot of blood on them all the time. So
yeah, exactly.
Perfect scam. You can also get cool banners and like mugs and stuff.
Yeah, you can drink the blood of your enemies out of one of the mugs. That's always doable.
Yeah. You can use a banner to clean up all the blood from all the encounters you have with people. There's a lot of blood involved with our products. Redbubble. Yeah. Other ways to support the show is we have a Patreon. You can join the Imperial Tithe and help the show keep going. Ad-free version, $2.50, and a video version for $5. So very affordable, especially in these trying economic times.
That's a sad sales pitch at the end. It's like you had me and then you made me sad.
Well, that's why you should sign up to Patreon.
Man. Don't be sad. Give us your money.
Funny. Yeah, and when you sign up to the Patreon, you can join the live stream. They're a lot of fun. People are in the comments right now yelling. We had a nice technical mishap that only the live stream will know about. So that's our little secret.
Yeah. You can also get in on those little secrets.
But
there is also that call-in guest at the end of the episode as well from the live stream as well. So
yeah, love the call-ins. I think this episode we're gonna have quite a few call-ins. I don't have as many notes as I normally have. The topic of Krorks and Prime Orks, you know, there isn't a lot of information on them, but we can speculate a lot and we can hope and we can dream together as we go down this rabbit trail of Orkolution. I've called it Ork Evolution. If those are slow, like the orcs couldn't put those two words together.
It's the opposite.
Fancy.
It's not evolving, it's devolving.
Well, you know, yeah, they devolve, they evolve. You know, when I was kind of looking over in the notes, there's kind of like the ups and downs of the orc cycle, and we might be on an upward trend of greatness. So keep your eye out. All I can see is green if you invest in it.
I can just imagine like some
amazing
like orc who finds a top hat and he's like, "I call it orc economics." I can just see it now.
Step 1, I bash you with my club. Step 2, profit. Yeah. So this episode we're going to be talking about the Krorks, and we're going to jump all the way back to the old ones and talk about the Brain Boys and the wars in heaven. Then we're going to talk about their de-evolution, and then we'll talk about some Pharaoh Boys and Mekboys, and with Mekboys comes evolution, and that'll bring us to modern 40k orcs, followed by Prime Orks, and we got a couple campaigns. You know, there's 2 honorable mentions of what could be Prime Orks, and 1 for sure. But yeah, it'll be a fun little episode to kind of go down the green with you. Up first, you know, I think it's only natural that we all have to provide an orc accent to do an orc episode. So I thought, let's have a runt herder from a different clan tell us all about what we're about to learn before we learn the Imperial. So I'll go up first. And, you're sitting around the campfire, your little grotling, a snotling, you're petting your little squig off beside you, and the runt herder is telling you this tale of your history. Oi, listen up, you lad. And thing I'll tell you about the Brain Boys and the Krorks, the real clever boys from the war in heaven, you get me? I always forget how harsh that voice is.
Yeah, you're not doing a whole episode like this.
No, that's why we could only do the starter off, I'll change it up and do maybe a more clever orc than a brutal orc. The Brain Boys was the first, smarter than any of us, right? But they was a bit too clever for their own good, you see. They made the Krorks the mighty war machines that the orcs used in the great fight. The Krorks was big and strong, and they was built to smash and smash and smash some more. The Brain Boys and the Krorks was the best team, making war all over the place, fighting them star gods and tearing the galaxy apart. But the Krorks didn't die. Not like them Brain Boys did. Nah, we was more like the Orks. They never really stop us. We just keep coming back. So that summarizes a nice little war in heaven and the Krorks for you. It's about all the Orks care to share, I'm sure.
They're supposed to have like a lower soccer, like English. Oh, what's that?
Hooligan.
Birmingham? No. Yeah, like soccer hooligan accent.
Hashtag not all orcs sound
Mark,
like that, I'll have you know.
But no, I was about to say, you sound like Die Antwoord from like,
I was just thinking
South
that.
African.
I was like, he's like that guy from Chappie.
Oh yeah, yeah. Fuck, that guy was great. Okay. Yeah, no, I think that's great orc culture down there too. Really lines
South
up.
African orcs, just terrifying.
Christian, lay it on me, your orc voice, if you're so good.
I'm not saying I'm good. I wasn't gonna say I was gonna do better. But now, as for us orcs, we was got something real special in the head, right? We don't need no fancy learning, nah. We just know how to fix stuff and make it go boom. Mekboys, they're the ones that make the best stuff, you see. It don't matter if it's a big Umi tank or just a bit of scrap. It's around us, it gets turned into something deadly. If the mechs is around, a big fancy spaceship is an Umi gun. The mechs will take it, smash it up, and turn it into something bigger and better. Sometimes to be big and too much better is to explodes. Oh man, that is rough on the voice.
Yeah. It's like throat fuck in a club or something. It's awful.
But that's the way that works, right? What makes stuff work is by using what we got, and if it breaks, we just make it work again and better.
I love that.
Yeah.
That was perfect summary of that. Mekboys.
All right, bro diddly. Let's hear what you got for us.
Bro diddly. All right. Now, Prime Orks, that's the real deal, innit? They's the closest we've got to the Krorks from back in the day, you see. Prime Orks, they's bigger and meaner and smarter than the rest of us. They got all the best tech, and then, cause they just makes a new one. It's an even bigger and better. Them Prime Orks, they got tech that can make the ground shake, the skies burn, and the enemy run in fear. Ain't no stopping them, not when they's around. Cause they bring the might to Krorks, and they've got all the right tools for all the jobs.
That one was good.
And the chat is going wild.
Yeah.
Brody is killing it. Best one yet. Standing ovations all around. Sick tone.
I love it.
Oh yes.
Beautiful.
So now if that is good enough for your all knowledge of orc lore, that's fine. If you're an orc player, that's probably all you need to know. For the rest of us Imperial fans and intellectuals, we can carry on to the real meat of the episode and learn what the fuck we just were talking about.
It's too bad Gerald wasn't on this episode too. That would have been beautiful. Gerald and Brody together.
Yeah, I might have to write a script with them.
Yeah,
wogging with one another.
Wogging each other about.
I just saw in the chat Spaghetti Seth called me Brork.
Brork.
Fantastic.
That's a good one. Oh man.
Oh boy.
So believe it or not, And this is one thing I've changed my tone a lot about Krorks and Prime Orks, but we'll get to that later. Believe it or not, Krorks and Prime Orks is kind of an imperial classification of orcs. Orcs don't necessarily care about what they're labeling themselves. Yeah, they have some odd boys, and you can loosely trace what they are. But honestly, when going and doing this research, Prime Orks and kind of even Krorks are almost just imperial classifications, which I found very interesting because when the Prime Orks kind of came out that War of the Beasts, I wasn't too happy with this new evolution. But knowing it's not really an evolution, it's still just an orc, I don't know, I kind of changed my tone on it.
You'll have to sell me on it.
Like even when I like read like the War of the Beast thing, it was for me, it wasn't an evolution. It was the same thing that you see in all orgs. They just modeled themselves after the Prime Orks because they were from the Eleanor planet, right? So they got
Yeah.
beat by Prime Orks. So obviously, if they make them Prime Orks, that's their whole shtick, right? So I don't think it was actually ever an evolution. It's just the same thing that we always see where orcs, they're the biggest, they're the baddest, and they show that by getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the Prime Orks were all bigger. So whoever the biggest orcs were, they're the Prime Orks.
Yeah, and I think that's the perfect way to kind of say it for sure. So I've definitely had to recant some of my previous Lorehammer statements on this topic. I've flogged myself appropriately. But yeah, so when we're doing this kind of categorization, like it is kind of loose. The Imperium does it this way. These aren't actually different evolutionary trails. But let's jump all the way back to the origins and the old ones and the brain boys, and let's see how the orcs and the Krorks were originally created. Across the immeasurable expanse of time, in an era long eclipsed by myth, the Old Ones waged their fateful struggle against the Necrons and their Satan overlords. In the twilights of the Dominion, these ancient architects of life turned to creation as their final gambit, fashioning the Krorks, a race of towering warriors from who the belligerent orcs of the present age are thought to descend. Guided by profound mastery over the fundamental forces of existence, the Old Ones, or at least some later fragment of knowledge suggests, the enigmatic Brain Boys, crafted the Krorks alongside the forebearers of the Eldari. Each was sculpted with a purpose, living weapons imbued with instinctive martial prowess, charged with the protection of their creators against relentless adversaries and threatening their cosmic order. There is a bunch of other races too that the Old Ones created during this time. Like even rumors are spread around that humans were seeded by the Old Ones. Seeding is an interesting technology too because they're throwing a bunch of cosmic material out into the universe and seeing what sticks. And yeah, they might modify some genetically, but it's not. They're using the process of millions of years of evolution more so than making something in a lab overnight. In their desperation, the Old Ones wove knowledge into every marrow of the Krork. The genetic code carried the seeds of technological aptitude, a latent inheritance that would manifest when necessity called. So too were they gifted with an extraordinary psychic gestalt, an arcane force that bound them together, growing in potency as their numbers swelled. Thus, even the crude brutality of their later forms echoed of their primeval design persists. When an orc is born to be a Mekboy, he does not learn, but he remembers. His hands, guided by genetic memory, wields tools that with instinctive certainty, as if answering some forgotten decree. In this way, the legacy of the Old One endures, an echo of lost wisdom carried from the brutish yet strangely enduring children of war. Yeah, it's a very cool origin story. I love too that the Eldar were one of their favorite psychic clients, but the orcs are just as psychic too. They have their whole WAAAGH effect, and we won't go too heavy into that right now, but it's cool how psychic and how really that's what was needed to defeat the Necron at the time, the Old Ones thought.
Yeah, and it's like antithetical to how Necron, right? Like the warp is like antithesis to the Catan and Necrons, so it's fitting as their chosen weapon against
I also love that it's like their genetic code is inherently like, oh, if you need something, you'll remember.
You
You'll remember how to
remember.
make it. Like
Yeah.
like I would just love that. I'm like trying to figure out how to like build a box, and I'm like, oh, okay, just like
I'm
just
having
do something.
flashbacks.
Yeah, just like just Nam flashbacks, the choppers going off. I only have
Comes
You're
out
having the
perfect every
wrong
bang
time.
kind.
in my brain.
Yeah, wrong kind of flashbacks.
Yeah.
It's interesting how many different ways they kind of tried this uh, way of learning out, because we also have the Jokero created by the old ones, and they have a similar but different type of memory where they kind of can just create stuff without even like knowing. It's just like, yeah, this instinctual thing, and then all of a sudden they
Yeah.
got a las cannon in their hands.
Yeah, they just do it
Yeah.
out of nowhere.
Pretty crazy.
All right, let's get into the war in heaven. In an age so distant that even myth can barely grasp its echoes, the Old Ones strode as architects of existence, weaving the skeins of life and shaping the cosmos to their grand design. Before the Eldari took their first steps upon the path of sentience, before the stars bore witness to the dominion of lesser species, the Old Ones waged war against the Necrontyr in a cataclysmic conflict later remembered as the War in Heaven. The Necrontyr were one of the few self-aware races encountered by the Old Ones as they traversed the galaxy, yet they were wretched in their suffering. Born beneath the cruel gaze of a dying sun, their fragile forms were racked by its lethal radiation, their brief and agonizing lives a torment to their own existence. When they beheld the Old Ones, ancient, near immortal, untouched by frailties that plagued them, jealousy festered in their consuming hatred. Desperate to escape their torment, the Necrontyr sought the wisdom of their elder foes, pleading for the secret of longevity. But the Old Ones, in their unfathomable wisdom, or their cold indifference, refused. This denial ignited the first great interstellar war ever fought. With technology dwarfed by the supremacy of their enemies, the Necrontyr's efforts to claim the secrets of eternity were doomed. The Old Ones cast them back into the distant reaches of the galaxy, exiling them to the desolate stars of the Halo region. Yet, in their isolation, the Necrontyr's hatred did not wither. It deepened, hardening into an unrelenting thirst for retribution. As the millennia crawled by, their vengeful gaze turned toward a force as ancient and unknowable as the Old Ones themselves, the Catan.
Oh man, the war in heaven is so cool. It goes back and forth a good handful of times. In this time, this go around, the Old Ones hand it to the Necron. They're still in their weak form. There was no need at this point to even make any client races. The other crazy thing to think about the War in Heaven is just like how long it is. Like we could be talking about millions of years this kind of galactic conquest the Necron were having, and then they're pushed back, and then once again they rally forces we're about to talk about. But it could have happened over millions of years. We don't really know.
No. Yeah, it could have been like as big as or bigger than the current state of 40K. Like this was the only thing going on in the galaxy at one point. For countless ages, the Necrontyr had studied their sun and the celestial infernos that burned across the void. In their ceaseless search for power, they encountered the Catan, vast ethereal entities composed of pure energy, parasitic beings that drifted upon the tides of the cosmos, feasting upon the light of stars. Yet, for all their unfathomable might, the Catan were incomplete, unable to fully grasp the material universe. The Necrontyr, ever cunning, offered them form. From the living metal they'd called necrodermis, they forged vessels for these ineffable beings, binding them in physicality. In return, the Catan became the new gods of the Necrontyr, their radiant brilliance eclipsing even the terrible majesty of the Old Ones. As the Catan took shape, so too did their appetites evolve. No longer were they content with the cold nourishment of stellar energies. The pain, terror, and life force of the corporeal realm proved far richer, far more intoxicating. The Necrontyr had unshackled a horror beyond reckoning. Yet their gods offered them a dark salvation, the end of suffering, the annihilation of frailty. The Necrontyr, weary of their mortal burdens, accepted. They surrendered their souls to the Catan's design, their minds and flesh transmuted into undying necrodermis. but the salvation they craved proved a cruel deceit. In casting off their mortal forms, they forsook more than pain. They lost their very essence. Their souls were stripped away, their psyches hollowed, their wills crushed beneath the cold indifference of the new existence. They had sought eternity and found oblivion.
But Christian, you might be wondering to yourself, I thought we were talking about Krorks. What does all this have to do?
I was wondering that the whole time I was reading. This sounds like Necron. It is Necron.
One thing that we'll learn about orcs as we go through this episode is they are amazing mimics in which whoever they are fighting, they're going to start to mimic technologically. So we got to look, we got to put the orcs' first enemy, the Krorks' first enemy into the spotlight to see what they're capable of, to then understand what the orcs are capable of. And as we go on, the war progresses.
Thus were the Necron tier undone, and in their place rose the Necrons, soulless, immortal, and bound to their service of their star gods. No longer driven by hunger, fear, or desire, they became the instruments of the Satan's gluttonous wrath. Across the stars, the red harvests began, worlds scoured, civilizations silenced, the living reduced to mere sustenance for the insatiable hunger of the divine predators. The war in heaven, once a struggle between mortals and ancients, now became a holocaust of cosmic proportions. Faced with the nightmare they had long foreseen, the Old Ones wove a final gambit into the fabric of existence. They birthed new races, warrior species tempered with the flame of psychic beings whose very essence resonated with the energies of the Immaterium, capable of striking at the Satan's one great weakness. Among these were the Aldari, the Rashan, and the Knib. The Old Ones, long masters of the webway and the Immaterium's mysteries, bestowed upon their creations the knowledge of the warp, forging them into weapons of war against the soulless tide, the Necrons, and their god masters. But the Old Ones had underestimated the cost of their own design. The Immaterium, once a vast and unknowable realm of potential, began to shift. Responding to the raw emotions and collective fears of these new races, where once only whispers drifted through the warp, now gods began to stir. Some benevolent, others monstrous. From this tempest, the first demons clawed into being, and the entities that would later be worshipped as the Eldari's deities rose from the maelstrom of belief. The war raged on, the Old Ones driving their creations forward in a desperate bid to stem the tide. The Satan and the Necron legions, sensing their vulnerability, sought a final means to sever the link between the material world and the Immaterium. The forged monolithic pylons, constructs of blackstone that disrupted the psychic weave, silencing the power that had been turned against them. And yet, even as this struggle reached its crescendo, an unforeseen horror arose from the Immaterium itself.
Yeah, crazy. It's all the Old Ones' fault. They classic
All the
psyker.
Old Ones did fart, but yes,
they did.
It
Yeah.
is their fault too.
It's a classic. They tried to overpower. They tried to tap too greedily, too deep into the warp, and then they all of a sudden created demons and woke up all this chaos upon themselves. The demons back then were very different as well, which we'll get into. They're kind of wild. The enslavers.
Yeah.
The other wild thing about that is, what do you think? Like the Satan. Like we talk about soul levels and stuff, and like Tau we know have no souls, and like okay, so Eldar, Necron must have been tasty for the star gods to eat them. What's it like eating an Old One's soul? Was that even better? Was that the Satan's motivation of this all?
Yeah, can you imagine just the soul of an immortal being who's lived lifetimes upon lifetimes?
Slurping out that frog brain.
It's delicious. You ever had truffles? Very similar to truffles.
No, eating
Very
orc is
similar.
like eating truffles, and eating Old One is like eating frog legs.
Or bootstraps.
There you go. Yeah.
I was gonna say the French are confirmed Catan.
Oh, oui. I am a star god.
They all have a
Yeah,
French
I hate
accent. Little known fact.
It's
Little
a
no-
terrible Quebecois French accent.
I wouldn't put it past GW to do that. The English-French rivalry.
No, never.
So the war
Boy.
continues. The enslavers, parasitic entities of the warp, descended upon the galaxy, drawn by the burgeoning psychic potential of the Old One's creations. They wormed their ways into the minds of mortals, using them as living conduits through which to manifest into the psychic physical realm. What had once been a war for survival became an apocalyptic struggle against a tide of horrors beyond reckoning. The Old Ones, their great experiment turned against them, faltered at last. In their final desperate throes, they sought to create yet more species to stem the tide. Among them, the brutish instinct-bound Krork and the cunning mimic Draco. Although it was too late, the enslavers' plague swept across the galaxy, consuming all in its path. Civilization crumbled, and the Old Ones, once the unquestioned masters of creations, were undone. Their fate lost to the abyss of time. Some whisper that they perished in the devastation. Others claim they fled, vanishing into the void beyond their stars, leaving only the echoes of their works behind. The Necrons, bereft of their prey, turned upon the gods. In a final act of defiance, they shattered the Satan into fractured shards, enslaving their former masters as the weapons of war. But they had no empire left to rule. Weary of eons of battle, their civilizations in ruins, they chose to slumber over conquest, entombing themselves in the vast crypt worlds to await a distant age when the stars would again be ripe for dominion. Thus, the war in heaven, leaving the galaxy as scarred and forever changed. The Webway, once a great dominion of the Old Ones, became the Eldari's inheritance. The Immaterium, a once realm of limitless potential, had become a seething cauldron of chaos and horror. And the Necrons, architects of their own doom, slumbered beneath the sands of forgotten worlds, dreaming of a future which they might rise again and reclaim what was lost. But the Old Ones were gone, and their legacy, both wondrous and terrible, endures in the echoes of creation itself. Yeah, what a world. That war changed everything for everyone. Planets were destroyed, planets were terraformed as well, and then destroyed over eons of time. And no one really won it.
There was a demon plague. Crazy.
A demon plague,
Nobody wants
yeah.
that.
But after all that and through that, the Krorks found their place, honestly, and what happened to them was kind of interesting. Even they kind of lost in the end. Like everyone kind of lost in the end because they were created to fight the Necron, and then the Necron ultimately just slumbered. And what happens to an orc when he has no one to fight, we'll find out. But let's first talk about the actual Krorks and their kind of cool things about them.
All I can think of is like an introspective orc. Why does orc fight?
Why does Ork WAAAGH
only fight? Like,
if no fight, why live?
Why orc?
orc sad.
Someone needs to do a
so
philosophy book for orcs, but written by orcs for orcs. The deepest
I'm
thought.
on it.
I love it.
All right.
Orchestodal.
Orkrates. Oh no, actually they do have who's the inventor orc?
Yeah, Orcates. Yeah.
No.
Orchimedes.
Orchimedes, thank you. Yeah.
Orchimedes.
He is a
I
character. Yeah. But you can have all the greats.
Fantastic.
All the greats. All right, let's finally get to the reason we're all here. Krorks. How do you pronounce Krork? Krork. Krork.
Like a frog.
Like a ribbit.
Krorks.
Yeah. Krork. The Krork were among the most formidable creations of the Old Ones, engineered to serve as living weapons against the Necrons and their Catan overlords during the War in Heaven. Towering over most other species, these massive warriors dwarfed even the largest of modern orcs, standing at heights that rivaled the constructs of the Necrons themselves. Their immense physical strength was matched only by their resilience, as their biology was designed to endure wounds that would have felled lesser beings. Unlike the anarchic and undisciplined orcs of the later ages, the Krork were bred to be far more intelligent, possessing an innate sense of military strategy and order that made them a far greater threat to the Necrons than their degenerate descendants. In terms of technology, the Krork wielded weapons and armor that surpassed even the crude yet effective arsenals of modern orcs. The Old Ones had gifted them with advanced war gear, including energy-based weaponry capable of rending Necron constructs apart, as well as heavily reinforced armor that allowed them to withstand the deadly gauze weaponry of their foes. Moreover, the Krork were known to incorporate Old One technology into their own war machines, creating devastating war engines that could engage Necron forces in direct combat. Their ability to instinctively understand and manipulate technology ensured that they could adapt quickly to the rapidly evolving battlefield, using salvaged Necron materials to enhance their own war efforts.
Yeah, like when you're fighting the Necrons, these enemies that shoot like star particles at you and have black hole guns and all these crazy weapons. How do you counter that? You make these big 30-foot tall brute creatures, strap a bunch of guns on them, strap a bunch of armor on them, and you send them off.
Yeah. Yeah, they are actually like primordial space marines. Like they were literally engineered from the genetic level to be soldiers, like warriors. Super tough and hard to kill. At the time, like a lot more tactically intelligent, able to use technology and weapons and advanced weapons and armor. Like they were the original space marines. You heard it here
Hot
first.
take.
Which is insane to feel
Yeah.
like. Yeah. You heard it here first, folks. Krorks, the original Space Marines. But, like, also, like, just, like, a throw off, like, line in that, they have armor that can just withstand Gauss weaponry. Nobody has that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not replicable today, right? In, like, today's timeline. So, the fact that they had that is just insane.
Yeah, it's almost like its own form of yeah, I wonder if it like healed from it, like, Gauss deadamatizes, and if that like just like readamatized quicker, or if it was like a reflection thing. But either way, man, that's some deep pseudoscience we could go down.
Love it.
Deep pseudoscience.
Yeah. Nanomachines.
Nanomachines just repairing. I
Yeah.
love too how the Krorks were created as kind of like, this wasn't their first kind of species of war. In fact, this was kind of a last result. Like they're a lot more brutish. You can't control them quite as well. And yeah, I like that it wasn't one of the first species. They're like, hey, this would be a great idea.
Yeah. Yeah, they're just like throwing like everything they can at this. We'll make it strong, unkillable, and give it lots of good guns and armor.
And it likes to fight.
Yeah. Yeah, and it thrives in warfare.
Yeah, it likes this lifestyle that we've given it. It's not like Dante just sitting there like, please fucking end me. Or, sorry, I swore. Ooh, bad word.
Against the Necron legions, the Krork proved to be both a mighty force and a significant challenge. Their raw strength and durability allowed them to engage Necron warriors in brutal melee combat, tearing apart even the most heavily armored Necron constructs with sheer brute force. However, the Necrons possessed a terrifying advantage. Their ability to regenerate and return to battle meant that even the most decisive Krork victories were often short-lived. Moreover, the Necrons' reliance on overwhelming firepower combined with the sheer numbers of their undying armies made them an almost inexhaustible force. Despite their resilience, the Krork were not invincible, and their sheer physical might could not always counteract the cold, unrelenting efficiency of the Necron war machines. The Old Ones deployed the Krork as shock troops, sending them to the front lines where they could engage Necron forces in direct, ferocious combat. Unlike the psychic races created by the Old Ones, such as the Eldari, the Krork were not designed to wield the power of the warp in battle. Instead, they were a direct countermeasure to the Catan, who were highly resistant to psychic energies, but still vulnerable to physical destruction. In vast hordes, the Krork waged war across countless worlds, their numbers replenished by the genetic programming of the Old Ones, which ensured their continued survival even in the most hostile conditions. Though they lacked the subtlety or arcane knowledge of their Old Ones' creations, the sheer durability and martial prowess made them one of the most effective weapons against Necrons. Yeah, even like not just the fact that they're really hard to kill, but if you do kill them, you just got to bide your time, and then your forces will also replenish too, which is also like a crazy advantage. Like they're a self-regenerating army. Takes a little longer, not like a Necron regeneration, but like time regeneration.
Yeah.
That'd just be terrifying. just a Krork just grows from the ground. Just, oh
so
my God.
quick.
Stop.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, no, they're a perfect counter, really. Like, as much as there could be one against Necron who have no real counter, like, yeah, they reproduce super quick. They're not gonna get stopped by just casual weapons or anything like that. They're just too deadly, too dangerous.
Yeah, facing off against them would be like absolutely terrifying. Just like a juggernaut of like will not die, will not stop.
Just imagine a WAAAGH, like a mob of 30 boys, but each one of those boys is 30 feet tall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like wearing like orc armor is surprisingly advanced, especially like when it gets to the higher stages. But yeah, like wearing advanced armor, they're not just like strapping metal plates to themselves like the orcs that we
Yeah.
get to know. Like a lot of the art that depicts Krorks, I don't think any of it's official. Maybe one piece is, but it definitely their armor looks very advanced.
Yeah, sleek. Like it still has crude paint jobs and spikes attached every now and again, but it's very clean still underneath lines and like
advanced. Yeah.
You can you can just look
brutal.
at things and you're like, that's fancy. That's advanced. Like that's better than
that's
anything I
fancy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it still has like a brutal look to it, but it's definitely a lot cleaner and more advanced. It's not just like salvage.
Yeah.
100%. I wondered too back then if the Krorks kind of had Grots and Gretchens and Snotlings and kind of those other Orkoids, or if that's more over 60 million years that Spungus has kind of spawned these other things.
Spungus.
Disgusting.
How do you think they reproduce? They come on the fucking mushroom.
Fungus all over the place.
Right.
What do you guys think?
Don't step in that spungus, son. You're gonna drag Krorks into the house.
Do you think those other kind of minor evolutions existed, or?
I don't know if we know enough about the Krorks to say for sure. I don't know. Gretchen can be pretty cunning, so there could be an argument made that they were, possibly like more intelligent in the past, like during the Krork era. But also, I don't see what purpose they would have either, because Orc society isn't independent at that time. It's like they're like engineered as a military force.
Yeah, like,
so it would
military
culture
forces
wasn't
still
Orc
need
culture back then.
Like
support
units. Yeah.
But you have other species. You have like everything that the old ones created, right? So and that's the other question.
The old ones themselves were supporting with weapons and stuff.
Right, exactly. So again, like it's just a question. I'm not saying yes or no because we don't know. It's not answered. But yeah, did they work together in tandem with each other? There was someone in the comments that asked something along the lines of like the Orcs served at the discretion of the Eldar, and the Eldar were more like the brains of the operation and like commanded the Orcs or Krorks. Again, like we don't know how their armies operated. Did they just send them as like big units of their own kind, or did they do mixed unit tactics? We don't know. Sure. We can speculate. We can pretend mentally, but I like literally there's no. You could you could come up with convincing arguments for one way or the other.
Yeah.
Didn't just like 3 or 4 Krorks and like 5 or 6 Eldari like warriors and like a couple and like a Chikaro and just all running in like a small unit fashion. It's like what a sight to see.
Yeah.
An argument
superhero poses.
For the mixed unit tactic, one would be something like the Covenant, where you have like grunts and elites kind of working in tandem, and hunters and jackals, right? Anyone who's familiar with Halo.
The prophets are the old ones.
Yeah, you could have a setup like that where like each kind of species knows its role and they kind of like adapt to what they're built for. Or like I said, they could have like your own, we're just going to send a cluster of Krorks at this like hard target that just won't break, and then we'll send in Eldar troops after to do mop-up operations or something like that, right? Like, you could rationalize it either way.
Yeah, and just like 40K, like almost anything can happen. I'm sure all these happened over the millions of years of this war in heaven. They tried different techniques. Oh, it didn't work that way. Oh, the Krorks keep killing the Eldar as well after they kill all the Necrons.
Exactly.
So
like, how much did they synergize? How well did they work together? How much independence did they have as units? Even the Eldar, were the Eldar like able to free think, or were they like a little more under control of the old ones? Right?
Yeah, you never know.
I like to definitely think that it was just the Krorks back then. It wasn't like the whole different spore society with, grots and squigs.
And that's where I tend to lean towards too. Is like that came later.
But yeah, super cool, man.
As the war in heaven neared its end, the Krork, like many of the Old One's creations, were left adrift in a galaxy now consumed by chaos and ruin. The fall of their creators led to their gradual degeneration into the primitive and war-hungry orcs of the modern era, their once great empire lost to time. Yet echoes of their former might can still be seen in the orcs of today, glimpses of the unstoppable warriors they once were. If any Krork remained in their original form, slumbering on a forgotten world, their reawakening could spell doom for any who dared to challenge them, perhaps even the Necrons themselves.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, so here's what I propose. It wasn't just the loss of the old ones and their kind of mentorship, because I don't think they were mentoring these guys the same way they were mentoring the Eldar. I think their kind of fall and their degeneration is more so to do with who they're fighting, and they no longer are fighting Necrons, so they no longer have the need for the craziest weapons. Maybe they're just fighting each other, and sticks and stones are good enough for millions of years before more species evolve and get powerful.
Yeah, that's actually kind of a cool theory. I didn't think about it that way. I was gonna say they probably devolved because of neglect by the old ones. Like, they were purpose-built weapons, and what do you do when you no longer have a war? But I think you're right. Like you said, they adapt to their enemies. So if their enemies aren't particularly advanced, or like, not as advanced as a Necron, they don't really have a reason to fight at that level.
Yeah.
It's not good for orc society to not have war.
Yeah, and
stonks go down. When we get to Prime Orks 2, we see another little spike of interesting activity in the galaxy around that could cause like who was around then, but we'll get to that later. Let's talk about the de-evolution of the orcs and what happened to them after the war.
Absolutely. In the aftermath of the war in heaven, the once mighty Krork found themselves leaderless and scattered across the war-ravaged galaxy. With the old ones annihilated and their vast empire reduced to ruin, the Krork who had been bred for discipline and warfare began to fragment. Their once cohesive armies broke down into smaller war bands, each following the strongest among them. But without the guiding hand of the old ones, their organizational structure crumbled. Over countless generations, their genetic programming, once designed to maintain order and strategy, began to erode, giving rise to the wild and chaotic nature that would define the orcs of the future. The greatest of the Krork warlords fell, their vast knowledge lost, and in time, the towering, disciplined warriors of the war in heaven devolved into the savage, instinct-driven orcs known today. Despite this regression, the genetic legacy of the Krork ensured that the certain traits persisted across orc generations. The innate ability of some orcs to understand technology, the Mekboys, remained, allowing them to maintain a crude but effective level of technological prowess. These Mekboys, seemingly born with knowledge of building weapons, vehicles, and machines, ensured that orcs would never fully regress into primitive beasts. However, as the orcs spread across the galaxy, their civilization would repeatedly rise and fall in cycles of evolution and de evolution. Some groups would temporarily achieve high levels of technological sophistication, crafting massive war engines reminiscent of their Krork ancestors, only for their empires to collapse into anarchy as infighting and disorder took hold. This cycle of growth, spread, and collapse became a defining feature of orc society, preventing them from ever reaching the heights of their Krork forebears, but ensuring their continued survival.
This is kind of almost like, the Krorks are like that orc saying, where if all orcs could just get together and unite, they'd be so powerful. This is like the story of that, where they're not, though. They're warlike. Over millions of years, this is this tale of orcs. They battle, they evolve, they battle, they fall, and that's it.
And then like also too, like where it said like they started, their armies, split up into these smaller war bands and everything like that. And how did they become orcs? Like how did they de-evolve? Well, I bet you some of those small war bands were trapped on planets that didn't have any other life on them,
They
really.
killed everything already there.
Um,
Yeah.
They killed everything else.
like smart life that would
Yeah,
they'd kill
exactly.
everything, and so they're like, so over however many generations would the Krork just start to like de-evolve? Like, well, we can't actually power our weapons anymore. Well, we can't wear our powered armor anymore. Well, we don't have
Stick
any
to trick.
gunpowder.
Like,
Sticks are good. Rock better. Or Krork hungry.
yeah.
Like, it's gigantic de-evolution.
Yeah, and during just this age too, it's that de-evolution, but then also this is where I imagine maybe some orcs de-evolved way too far, and that's where we get grots, where those guys were just alone on a planet with no real food source, and maybe other parts kind of like were on dense jungles and kind of became more squigoffs and stuff as they kind of eat around, and it just, yeah, over millions of years, a lot can happen to a race of fungus.
Also, fungus just like shed fungus spores, right? Like just living. You shed enough fungus spores in one spot, those fungus spores are going to create more fungus, and maybe not necessarily the fungus you think they're going to create
Yeah,
based
yeah,
off the
yeah.
planet they're on. Like maybe there's a planet that like they were on, and it basically had like other life that the spores infected, and that's how you got squigs, or that's how you got Gretchen, or whatever, right?
Sure.
So all
Oh,
sorts of stuff like that that could have been. All,
Um,
all I know, man, is mushrooms are scary.
I was gonna go on
Mushrooms
a
are
little mushroom
scary.
trail. Like, you ever hear of how like mushrooms they have like that mycelium where it's like almost all connected? It's almost very Ork WAAAGH, where it's like, yeah, you got orcs, but it's all still kind of connected and powering and talking to each other. Very kind of strange stuff.
Yeah, fair, fair. Um, I'll finish this off here. I got one more paragraph. Over the next millions of years, the orcs spread across the galaxy, growing in numbers and adapting to every environment they encountered. While they had lost the discipline and grandeur of the Krork, they retained their brutal resilience, warlike instincts, and ability to repurpose any technology they found. Empires would occasionally arise, led by powerful war bosses or particularly cunning warlords, but these would always fall to infighting, ensuring that the orcs would never again reclaim their former greatness. And yet, the possibility remains that given the right conditions and the right leader, the orcs could one day rekindle the strength of the Krork, uniting under a warlord powerful enough to bring order to the chaos, the challenging even the mightiest powers of the galaxy.
Cool. So T Freeze asked a question. If they're fighting each other as Quarks, wouldn't they stay Quarks? I like to think that some or most left the galaxy. Yeah, I just think like orcs are just as happy to fight each other with a stick than they are with a giant laser cannon of epic proportions. They don't need the same level of destruction, so they just go on that downward trend where eventually, yeah, why waste time building machine when stick do trick?
Stick to trick.
Yeah.
I
And
love it.
over time too, you got to think like why aren't there any Krorks left? And there very well may be some hidden somewhere. Kind of like we were saying, like locked away in some deep slumber, waiting to be like reactivated. Unlikely, but it's possible.
I just yeah, maybe locked away in like whatever, but I think you need that enemy in order to reach that cork
Sure,
phase
I'm saying
again.
something along the lines like if maybe the old ones maybe put them in stasis or
Sure, okay.
somehow whatever.
Trazen got them
Yeah.
before
Aside from
he
that,
slept. Yeah.
it could be that like the original Quarks just like get killed off over time, right? Like a bunch of lesser orcs, maybe one stage less evolved than a Krork kills the old Krork and then becomes a new war boss, right? And like just over time, like a more degenerate Ork kills that Ork boss, right? And then so on and so forth. So eventually you will also kill off all the original Krorks too.
Yeah.
Especially if they fight all the time.
Yeah. I was also gonna say, like, I have like this like imagination in my head that there is in the webway somewhere, because that was the old one's thing. They had the webway. There is like a cryostasis like hub filled with Krorks that the old ones had just like ready to go and just never were able to use them for some reason. And then one day a Dark Eldar is going to get their hands on it. It's not going to be good for anybody.
Yes.
What an interesting way to
Yeah.
introduce a new faction back into Warhammer. How interesting that could possibly be.
Yeah,
Very
right.
nice.
Exactly.
I love the concept of that old one's lab, and like what else could be in there? You could have all the races in their true kind of old form. Like Eldari could be
Original
in there
form.
too. Yeah.
Mm,
That's a cool thought.
That's actually. Oh, now I'm thinking.
Now I'm thinking, let me get out the pen and paper. I got some notes to take. Liar says, did they have crazy amounts of infighting as Krorks? They seem smarter overall. The infighting might not have even started till they're already devolved. Like, I just think if you make a knife and that, maybe that's not a good thing. Orcs like fighting. Let's keep it simple. Orcs like to fight, and there's no one to fight. They're going to fight each other. It's just that simple. They're bred to fight.
Yeah, like fighting isn't necessarily a bad thing to them. It's bad to us, like as humans and stuff. Like we see, high risk activity. You might get hurt. You might get killed, right? But to orcs, they live for that fight, and Krorks were engineered to go to war. So it's more, that question of like, well, what do they do when they have no one to fight? Well, naturally, they'll fight each other. Like they just look for the next target.
So let's talk about like the lowest de-evolution. We've talked about the high point of the Orc Empire, the Krorks. Now let's jump all the way down to the lowly feral Orc boy. Feral boys are the most primitive and savage form of orcs, existing in brutal warlike societies on untamed worlds where technology has been lost or barely understood. These orcs have reverted to an almost bestial state, living in the tribes that rely on raw strength, simple weapons, and sheer brutality to survive. Without the influence of Mekboys or advanced war bands, feral boys. Oh, sorry about that. Or advanced war bands. Feral boys fight with crude axes, spears, and bows, hunting with massive beasts of their world and waging war constantly against each other. Despite their lack of technology, they are no less dangerous, perhaps even more so, as their sheer aggression and endurance allow them to overwhelm foes through relentless numbers and unbreakable determination. Even in the most primitive state, however, the inherent nature of orcs ensures that some level of technological advancement is always possible. Over time, certain orcs will begin to recall instinctual knowledge buried within their genetic memory, leading to a new rise of a Mekboy or Weirdboy. These individuals introduce rudimentary firearms, vehicles, and crude but effective war machines, slowly elevating the feral boys into more advanced states of warfare. This process can take centuries or even millennia, but is inevitable. No matter how savage the orcs become, their natural ability to innovate, build, and organize for war will eventually propel them back into the galactic stage. It is a cyclical pattern of regression and resurgence that makes the orcs an enduring threat across the millennia, ensuring that even a new world where thought to be free of orc influence may one day spawn a new orc warband. Imperial forces often underestimate feral boys due to their lack of advanced weaponry, but this is a grave mistake. These orcs are still just as strong, aggressive, and impossible to kill as any other, and their numbers can swell rapidly in the right conditions. A feral orc tribe left unchecked can grow into a massive horde and conquer vast swaths of the world before eventually developing a means to reach the stars once again. Many great orc empires have begun as mere feral boys on some forgotten death world, only to rise into interstellar threats once they rediscover the tools of war. Thus, the cycle continues. No matter how many times the orcs are shattered and driven back into savagery, they always return bigger, stronger, and ready for another great WAAAGH! Gazkill is a great example of how quick this evolution can really take place. Gazkill, the greatest war boss in 40k, he was stuck on a planet as like a pharaoh boy, fighting just amongst each other on the planet. And within, a handful of years, he decides to get off the planet because his star's going to explode. And now he's one of the biggest war bosses and has gone on a great crusade. It can happen quick.
Yeah. And that is something else I was going to bring up too when we're talking about, like, are there Krorks out there? It could very well be that one day, and we'll probably get into this a little later when we talk about, Prime Orks and stuff, but one day the Krorks might just naturally come back as the next evolutionary step on one of their upward crests, right?
Exactly.
Maybe Matt Gaskell is that first step in the Krork evolution.
Yeah, so like the next stage would be, that much smarter, that much more advanced. All right. Let's get into the Mekboys. Mekboys are among the most vital and mysterious members of Ork society, embodying the remnants of the Krorks' technological genius in an otherwise savage and instinct-driven species. Unlike human engineers or mechanicus tech priests, Mekboys are not trained in their craft, but are instead born with an innate understanding of machines, weapons, and technology. This knowledge, embedded deep in their genetic code by their long-dead old ones, allows them to construct complex machinery without formal education or blueprints. A Mekboy can take a pile of scrap and turn it into a warbike, a towering walker, or even a crude spacecraft, seemingly guided by instinct rather than logic. However, their work is rarely precise or stable. Most Ork technology functions as much through belief as it does through actual engineering, with Mekboys cobbling together devices that shouldn't work, but somehow do, so long as enough Orks believe in them. Yeah, it's interesting to note that this like instinctual creation of things is very advanced. Sometimes it might be unstable, but what they're able to do, like, what is that like? Is it a warp cannon or something that the Mekboys can use that fires like grots through the warp? What do they call that weapon? Like
snot attack gun.
Something attack gun. Shock attack gun? No, maybe shock attack gun.
Shock attack? Yeah.
Maybe. Anyways, they're able to develop like really advanced tech, like stuff that like even breaks the brains of like the most advanced Imperial tech marines or tech adepts. Like they're able to like mess with the warp or like do like advanced plasma technology or just stuff out of reach out of other species, and they're just doing it just like, hey, this kind of like looks like it fits together. I'm just gonna screw these two bolts and see what happens, right?
Nice. I could just imagine a Mekboy at his workshop, and he's a pharaoh boy basically, and he's making a bow and arrow, and he's like, "Oh, this is pretty sweet." Goes back to his table. The next thing he picks up is a plasma gun. Like the progression is just like, oh, went from bow and arrow to plasma gun.
Huge. Yeah, but that's exactly it, right? Like it is crude technology, but the stuff it can do is like beyond what the Imperium can do. Like they can even move like moons when they get sufficiently advanced.
The shock attack gun, by the way, is the correct one. Yeah, it shoots things through the warp.
Yeah, like I'm at like the Imperium can't do that. They can like create something big like a portal big enough to send a ship through, but they can't create like a stable portal at the size, just throw a grot through it.
Yeah.
And like target it at something very specifically.
And then carry it around and not have it like attached to some huge generator for power. Like, yeah.
Right, exactly. Like just the things they can do, just mind-bogglingly advanced, yet also super crude and unstable at the same time. Yeah. It's like building a nuclear reactor out of like a mini fridge. Just like, oh yeah, it just came to me in a dream.
Came to me in a dream.
Again, it's the Nom flashbacks for me. Just shock attack gun.
Despite their crude and chaotic methods, Mekboys are responsible for the technological advancement of Ork society, ensuring that even the most primitive warbands have access to powerful weaponry and transportation. They are highly valued among Ork warbands, as strong Mekboys means a warboss can field deadlier vehicles, bigger guns, and stronger fortifications. However, Mekboys are also notoriously volatile, constantly experimenting with new designs, testing unstable weaponry, and engaging in fierce rivalries with other mechs. Their workshops are often filled with wild explosions, unpredictable energy discharges, and the occasional catastrophic failure that results in a Mekboy needing to regrow a limb or two. This reckless creativity makes them both indispensable and dangerous, as Mekboy's ambition can just as easily destroy his own warband as it can arm it with devastating firepower. Mekboys also play a key role in Ork society's cyclical evolution and devolution, ensuring that no matter how feral or primitive an Ork horde becomes, it will always retain some level of technological ability. Even on the most savage worlds, where Orks revert to a near animalistic state, Mekboys will eventually emerge, constructing crude weapons, vehicles, and power sources that allow the Orks to wage war on large scale once again. This ensures that Orks never fully devolve into mindless beasts and always retain the potential to rise once more as a galactic threat. Should a particularly powerful war boss unite enough Mekboys under a common banner, their combined efforts could produce war machines rivaling those of ancient Krork technology, hinting at the terrifying possibility that, given the right conditions, the Orks could reclaim their lost greatness and forge an empire to rival even the most advanced civilizations of the galaxy.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's just what I was saying earlier about there's potential there that they reclaim their Krork nature. I also like the other extreme too, where they're like borderline mindless beasts. That could make for some cool storytelling, you know, like you can't even talk in it, like, you know, just a wild orc ravaging maybe like a feudal world and like just snatching villagers in the jungle or something, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Just the orc in the night.
yeah, exactly. Like just this unkillable beast that wrecks villages.
Slowly growing in size.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm telling you that like orcs like everybody has like this comedy of like, oh, they're orcs. They've got a Cockney accent and they're kind of silly. Dude, imagine a feral orc and you're in a feudal like imperial world
Oof.
and there's just like this gigantic green creature with fangs that hangs out in the woods and you got to make sure that you're all inside at night because it'll fucking come in and get you.
Yeah.
Yeah, like imagine a bear, a tiger, and a gorilla all bred together.
That is not an orc, but I like it. What do you call this creature? Man, bear, tiger.
It's a feral orc.
Man, bear,
Bear,
pig.
tiger, pig. Yeah.
Oh man. The Mekboys are pretty interesting too. They're one of the main ways that the old ones kind of bred into this genetic intelligence. There are other examples like Pain Boys who know how to do a similar thing, but with biology instead of technology. They have runt herders who have the genetic memory of, like, you know, we did that little runt herder script at the beginning. They know the history and the kind of how to herd grots and gretchens and do kind of stuff like that. They got pig docs, they got herdas, they got a couple other ones, but they're not quite as sophisticated. Like a herder. Oh, so you know how to herd up some Gretchen. Good for you, little guy. Like, it's not really knowledge. That's not a trade, okay?
I always pictured like runt herders as like daycare workers. Like they're herding little Gretchen. They're basically just little kids and trying to teach them the ways of the orc.
Yeah, yeah. Just the daycare smashed after every day.
Right. All right. Do we want to talk about the evolution?
Yes, because
All
it's in the
right.
script.
And only because it's in the script.
Well, okay. I'm just trying to just okay. I was trying to have a seamless
Not on
transition.
this show. Your segues have
Not
to be so
anymore.
on point. They have to be so descriptive and imaginative.
Right. All right. Over the millions of years since the war in heaven, orcs have undergone countless cycles of evolution, de-evolution, and resurgence, resulting in wildly varying power levels across different periods. In the ancient past, some orcs still retained fragments of their core heritage, forming warbands that towered over lesser creatures and wielded technology that rivaled even the greatest empires of their time. However, as the orcs spread across the galaxy, their culture fragmented, and their once mighty war machines fell into disrepair. Natural selection favored those who could thrive in a state of constant warfare and adaptation, leading to the rise of the modern orc, brutal, cunning, and endurable warrior, far removed from the towering Krorks of legend. Over time, the orcs as a species stabilized into the form most commonly seen in the 41st millennium. The typical orc boy stands over 2 meters tall, tough enough to withstand injuries that would kill most creatures, and possessing an instinctive understanding of combat. While some individual orcs grow larger and more powerful due to prolonged fighting, eventually becoming knobs, war bosses, or even monstrous warlords. The species as a whole has settled into a relatively stable power level. The structure of orc society ensures that their populations remain in a constant state of war, preventing any single group from evolving too far beyond the others. Despite this, genetic throwbacks to the Krorks do occasionally emerge, producing rare individuals of terrifying strength and intelligence who far surpass normal orcs in size and capabilities. These Prime Orks are quite powerful as the legendary are not quite as powerful as the legendary Krorks, but they are still a cut above even the mightiest war bosses. Towering over their kin, they possess a mix of brutal cunning and instinctive technological knowledge, allowing them to rally vast WAAAGHs and construct war machines beyond the crude, ramshackle designs of most Ork Mekboys. Some believe that these prime orcs emerge when the orcs face particularly powerful foes, as their latent genetic potential reacts to the scale of the conflict. Though rare, their existence serves as a reminder that the orcs have never truly lost the power of their ancient ancestors. And given the right conditions, the galaxy may one day see a return of orcs on par with the Krorks of old.
Yeah, cool. So this is where we kind of got our modern orc culture. It's interesting that it was able to standardize to some degree. Like, I wonder how back the clans actually go, like snake bites and goths and all that.
Yeah, how far back does like they were created 60 million years ago and they've just de-evolved into this, but like their evolution into what you can't really say de-evolved because like they're not really the same thing anymore because there's like squigs and Gretchen and
Yeah,
grots and whatnot where they're a different thing now. So how far back does that history go and where do the two
yeah.
lines intersect,
Yeah, and
right?
then even that history, like how accurate would it be? Like if they did know it, like are the Goths their old name for the Goths was just like the word black, and then it was like just different like little subtle variations like that. So their kind of like main concepts and cores go back a long way. Like maybe the mech boy was called a tech boy at one time, and how far back does that go? Like who fucking knows? But it definitely seems to have stabilized, and at least for 10,000 years, it's kind of had the same kind of vibe. Orc culture.
Fuzz in the chat there says maybe the clans used to be Quark chapters, legions, regiments.
Sure, that's a maybe. We'll give you a maybe on that one.
Yeah. Everything on this episode is a maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
You get a maybe. You get a maybe.
It's just this the whole time.
So let's dive into modern 40k orcs. And orcs are one of the toughest and most physically powerful species in the galaxy. Designed for nothing but war, even the smallest orc boy stands taller and broader than an average human, with dense muscle and thick green skin that allows them to shrug off wounds that would cripple most beings. Their bodies heal rapidly, and they can survive injuries that would be fatal to nearly any other species, losing limbs, taking direct hit of high caliber rounds, or even being set on fire only fuels their desire to fight harder. The larger orc gets, the stronger and tougher they become, with the biggest war bosses capable of wrestling monstrous beasts into submission and crushing armored warriors with a single blow. This sheer physicality makes orcs some of the most resilient warriors in the galaxy, capable of overwhelming enemies through brute force and relentless aggression. One thing to mention too, I think we kind of touched on it briefly, is how when orcs fight, they do grow in size. So the more they fight, like the physical size, not just like, oh yeah, he's gained 10 pounds of muscle. It's like, oh, he gained 5 feet and 400 pounds of muscle. Like they grow.
Like a plant being watered and given appropriate sunlight. The orc bathes in blood and is exposed to rich soil violence.
It grows big and hardy.
To grow big and strong.
Rich soil violence. I'm just gonna plant all my orc minis in in dirt and just beat up the dirt and then pour blood on it.
Yeah, there you go.
See how that goes for me. Maybe it'll become painted and everything.
Now you're being hopeful. Despite their seemingly crude nature, the orcs possess a remarkable and unique form of technology. Their Mekboys have an instinctive knowledge of mechanics, constructing war machines that defy conventional logic. Orc vehicles, weapons, and armor often appear ramshackle and barely held together, but they function due to the combination of sheer durability, battlefield practicality, and perhaps even the latent psychic field generated by the orcs themselves. This technology is brutally effective, ranging from massive battle tanks and walkers to devastatingly powerful energy weapons and starships. Even their simplest firearms, like the crude but deadly shootas, are designed for maximum destruction, capable of firing in unpredictable bursts that can tear through enemy ranks. While orc technology lacks the precision of the Adeptus Mechanicus or the sophistication of the Eldari, it is robust, adaptable, and thrives in the chaos of battle. At the heart of orc society is their unique culture, a brutal and war-driven way of life that defines every aspect of their existence. Orcs live for combat, and their entire society is structured around strength, dominance, and battle. Clans and warbands constantly fight amongst themselves, with the strongest orcs naturally rising to power through sheer brutality and charisma. Their culture is built around instinctive behaviors, respect for strength, love for the loud noises and explosions, and an almost supernatural belief in their own superiority. This belief fuels their infamous WAAAGHs, a psychic phenomenon that unites orcs under powerful war bosses, creating an unstoppable tide of destruction that sweeps across the galaxy. Orcs do not fear death, for they know that as long as there are orcs, the fight will never end. To them, war is not just a necessity, it is the only way to live. Very fucking cool. Yeah, they from their very beginning, that's the only constant. You know, their shape and their form, their technology is changed, but all they ultimately want to do is just fight. That's their goal in life. However they go about it, that's just whatever.
Live to fight, fight to live. That's what my orc grandpappy used to say.
I wish humans just had that one goal.
Yeah.
Like, what's our one goal? Just pay taxes and die? Like,
our goal is also to live and fight. Have you heard of human history? Come on, man.
I guess.
Women are fun every now and again, I suppose. That's a fun purpose.
It's true.
Then you get children. Those are pretty purpose fulfilling, I suppose. But fighting, man, fighting's where it's at. Let me tell you.
I want to beat the shit out of everybody.
I do the cockfights down here while, and
it's not the cockfights you think.
No, it's me versus 10 chickens, man. Hell yeah, I win every time. Dinner served.
Showed up to the cockfighting. I trained all week, but it was not the kind of fight I thought I was going to be fighting.
Everyone looked at you funny when you showed up.
Zip those pants up.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the next stage of orc evolution, the Prime Orks. Prime Orks are exceptionally rare but terrifyingly powerful manifestations of the orkoid species, representing a return to the might of the ancient Krork. Unlike the common orc war boss, who grows larger and stronger through battle and dominance, Prime Orks emerge under extreme circumstances, usually when the WAAAGH energy of a massive orc war spreads across a world or even a sector. These beings stand far larger than any regular orc, often surpassing even the mightiest war bosses in both physical power and intelligence. Unlike their more brutish kin, Prime Orks retain a level of tactical cunning and leadership that echoes the strategic minds of their Krork ancestors. While still deeply embedded in orc culture, they display a terrifying level of focus and purpose, rallying vast hordes with an almost supernatural authority and crushing opposition with overwhelming force. The technology of Prime Orks is a step beyond the crude but effective machinery of regular orcs, as their presence supercharges the Mekboys and other specialists within their WAAAGH. Prime Orks instinctively understand more advanced forms of warfare. The war machines created under their rule are often larger, deadlier, and more sophisticated than standard orc vehicles. Gargant-class war engines, super heavy battle tanks, and devastating energy weapons become far more common, and in some cases, their Mekboys create technology reminiscent of the war gear wielded by the Krork of old. Some Prime Orks have even been known to wield massive power claws, energy blades, and other exotic weaponry that should only be beyond the understanding of regular orcs. Their presence accelerates orc evolution, creating an ecosystem of war where their armies become stronger, they're disciplined, and vastly more dangerous. Yeah, they start to like develop like not only just like tactical and acumen, they develop like bigger, grander strategy other than just like charge the enemy. Like they even the way they speak is like more sophisticated.
Yeah.
From the Beast Arises books, and then they also have like long-term strategic planning, in the sense of like they start to develop like
They're like
farming.
empire building
Yeah,
more so than just war.
yeah, exactly. Like they develop like a sustainability about them, where they start like farming food sources and like thinking ahead and like, okay, if we have a population of this size, what do we need to do to keep them sustained? Like there's a lot more
Yeah, that
foresight.
was one of the big ones with like the Beast Arises books where they start farming humans, and I'm like, that's dark. Like, but that's
Oof.
very orky at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like the way other orcs might think is like, I'm hungry now, I eat now. I'm hungry now, I hunt now. Whereas now they're like, okay, we have a system to just access food, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Patience even grows and like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and again, like
Self-control.
right, setting up things that you can pay off later, right? Like that foresight is a big change. Throughout
Yeah.
history, there have been a handful of confirmed sightings of prime orcs, each leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. While prime orcs remain rare, their occasional emergence serves as a grim reminder that the orkoid race is still evolving, and the true potential for their kind may not yet be fully realized.
It's cool too how they become kind of like a focal point too for the WAAAGH energy set. You know, if one of these does kind of evolve or show up or fight to become this size or whatever, their WAAAGH energy almost like multiplies the WAAAGH energy around it, creating even more. So it's not just a benefit for them that you got a big green orc. It's like almost everything around it gets better too.
Yeah, it's like a feedback loop, like a positive feedback. Like it just
Yeah. The next two that little campaigns we're going to talk about are honorable mentions. They both happened during the Great Crusade, but I'm classifying them as Prime Orks, but I don't think the Imperium ever officially did. But let's read and see if you guys would classify them as some Prime Orks too.
before you start there, the number of orc puns in the chat is atrocious and it needs
Unreal.
to stop.
Servant Orks.
Yeah.
Write that down. Write that down.
I may have spawned it by doing Orkolutions. I might have like set the precedent that kind of behavior is
What have you
okay.
done, Mark?
They have all the Primarchs, the orc Primarch version names, like just
Love it. The Goro hollowing. When the Emperor of Mankind emerged from the shadows of the long night and forged Terra into a unified bastion, he set his sights on the stars, dragging humanity out of the Dark Age. His great crusade rampaged across the galaxy, and the Imperium's earliest conquests clashed with the savage forces of the Orcs. Brutal, relentless Xenos, whose appetite for war first were seemed endless. At the heart of the Telon Reach, the Orc Empire of Goro stood as a testament to their ferocity. A world consumed by scrap and ruin, it was ruled by the Mekboys, Orc tech savants whose mastery of forbidden plasma technology made their empire a fearsome obstacle to the Emperor's will. Their weapons tore through the advancing Imperial fleets, shattering the Great Crusade's momentum. The Emperor's response was swift and brutal. Goro must burn. Thousand warships dropped from the warp, and with them came the fury of the Emperor himself. At his side stood Horus, the favored son, and the Luna Wolves. Augmented, relentless, and deadly, they teleported into the heart of Goro, deep within its scrap clad bowels, where even the Emperor's vast power struggled against the savage Ork defenders. These greenskins were towering monstrosities, their bodies grafted with bionics and weapons capable of ripping through space marine armor like paper. The battle on Goro reached a brutal crescendo, and in the chaos, the Emperor was separated from his retinue. Surrounded by orcs of unimaginable size, his defenses cracked under the weight of their savage onslaught. One orc, its strength beyond anything seen before, grabbed the Emperor, its massive hands squeezing through his golden armor. In a moment of desperation, Horus tore through the horde and cleaved the orc leader in two, rescuing his father. Together they pushed forward, reaching the heart of the scrap world where the Emperor collapsed Goro's plasma core, sending the planet into the warp and erasing the orc menace that had once ruled it. Only the rusted remains of Goro remained, and a shattered testament to the Orc Empire's annihilation. That's super cool.
Spicy. We've talked about that many times on Lorehammer, the orc that almost killed the Emperor.
What a guy.
And
Hall of Fame.
you know,
Hall of Famer right there.
What a guy, man, so close.
Right?
Fuck. Yeah, like in my mind, you have to be a Prime Ork, or you have to be a step above to come that close to killing the Emperor. No mere orc is doing.
Also, like, imagine, like, the Emperor is massive. This thing just grabbed him. Just grabbed him. Just like, you're my play doll
Yeah.
now. Like, just, oh my god.
Yeah. Could have been dealing with a 30-foot tall orc that is like resistant to psychic powers and like
that's the yeah, you're right. Like the psychic powers thing, like you look at like the Siege of Terra and the Emperor's might of like psychic will and how he literally fought demons off and everything like that. And he holds back the warp on Terra. And he can't like crack the skull of this orc. Like he just can't just be like,
yeah.
show him the light and the orc just turns off. Like crazy.
Yeah, it goes back, I think, into that like WAAAGH energy where like I think he counts as a Primarch, and everyone they're all just like kind of feedback looping each other to make him immune. If you try to tap into the warp, and his WAAAGH energy kind of counters it.
Yeah, crazy.
Now the other theory is some people call me a dumb bitch, and they say, "Oh, Mark, that was just the Emperor giving the Horus a chance to save him, so he could feel useful, grow a bond." But I say Primarch, damn it.
I'm saying it's Prime Ork. You can't change my mind. It's Prime Ork.
I can be bought, but not in this regard. The other honorable mention, also during the Great Crusade, is the Ulanor Crusade. And this one, I'm not as convinced, but we'll read and see where it takes us. The Ulanor Crusade was a savage imperial campaign to crush the Orc Empire of Overlord Ork WAAAGH, a warlord who ruled his greenskin hordes with an iron fist. By the final year in the 30th millennium, the Ulanor system was a boiling cauldron of violence where the Imperium launched its mightiest assault yet. 100,000 space marines, 8 million Imperial troops, and fleets of warships descended upon the hearts of Uruk's fortress palace. The Luna Wolves, led by Horus, spearheaded the assault, cutting through Orc resistance like a blade through flesh. The final battle saw Horus face Uruk himself, a towering brute surrounded by his loyal nobs. With lightning claws crackling, Horus tore through the Orc nobs, each swipe a death sentence for his enemies. When he finally confronted Uruk, the warboss was outclassed. Horus crippled the massive Orc, and with a primal war tossed his broken body from the battlements of the palace, sending him plummeting into the swarming horde below. The greenskin forces, thrown into disarray by the leader's death, began to retreat, but found themselves trapped as the Luna Wolves breached the outer walls, turning the battle into a massacre. Within the Overlord's chamber, Horus found a grim scene. The bodies of the Orcs and the Terminators alike littered the ground, with only Ezekiel Abaddon standing amidst the carnage, drenched in Orc blood. The Ulanor Crusade marks the height of the Emperor's campaign to reunite the stars, and the destruction of the Orc Empire was one of the greatest victories in the Imperium, the largest concentration of orcs ever wiped out by the galaxy. before the galaxy descended into even darker wars. But even as the flames of the Ulanor Crusade smoldered, a greater danger was rising. The War of the Beast, a terrifying greenskin invasion led by the enigmatic beast, erupted in mid 32second millennium. The Orks under the mysterious warlord launched an unprecedented WAAAGH, threatening to tear the Imperium apart. Their unstoppable rampage across the galaxy eclipsed even the destruction of Urk's empire. I think we'll end that there. I think we get to that guy next. I overwrote on that one, and it could have used some trimming, to be honest. But ultimately, I'm not sure if I rank this one as a Prime Ork. Yeah, sure, it was the biggest Ork empire, but that doesn't necessarily mean it had the biggest war boss and like the same level of technology. It didn't quite seem like that was around either.
Yeah, it's hard to say because, like, in theory or principle, the bigger the ork, the bigger the WAAAGH, the bigger the WAAAGH, the bigger the ork. So if it's the biggest WAAAGH, it must imply that it's the biggest ork.
Yeah,
But like, there could be a way around that. I don't know. Maybe it's a convergence of multiple ork empires. I don't know.
He could be more cunning than he is brutal, though. So there's like, not all war bosses are the biggest. There are some that are cunning.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. Fair.
When we were reading the Goro Hollowing, they mentioned the Orks had some technology and they were using like bionics, and there's a little bit of that mentioned to me, which kind of tips them into that more Prime Ork category.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Like the bionics, for sure. Their use of plasma weaponry, where they're just able to destroy massive parts of their fleet before they can even get close to the planet, kind of
Yeah.
shows that they have a sophistication about them that's different than the Eleanor Empire.
Yeah. What I found interesting, so I kind of think, okay, so what are the enemies at the time when these orcs are around? We know the Krorks were fighting the Necron. So what are the orcs fighting now? And maybe a little bit of the Imperium for sure. The Great Crusade is just kicking off. But the last great galactic player was the Eldar, like Prime Eldar, when they conquered the galaxy right before the fall of Slaanesh, which is right before the Great Crusade. So I feel like this is like a remnant of, they were just super close to being Quark level. They were fighting Prime Eldar, within their technological height. So they would then match their technology level up to kind of meet them. It's kind of my thought on why these guys kind of happened at this specific time.
Yeah, it could be. I also don't like to minimize things to just the factions that we know of. Like, there could be an orc warband just fighting the local fauna, and like over time gets really big.
Sure.
Or a warband that fights another Xenos race that's like a minor Xenos race.
Maybe even the Men of Iron, was a big contributor.
Yeah. Like there's lots of different factions that could be sprinkled around the galaxy, and especially before the Great Crusade, they haven't been annihilated yet. So there's actually tons of other civilizations out there. Some old human civilizations, like from the Dark Age of technology, could be at war with different orc factions.
Sure.
What's that other?
Lots of enemies though.
Yeah, what's that other alien Xenos race that's like they're like hunters, the
Rakghoul.
Ghoul, that's the one. Like imagine
Yeah, Rakghoul,
imagine
yeah.
orcs that just strictly fought those guys. Like they'd be a different breed, man. Like they'd be totally different set of skills that they would use to like fight those guys, and like there's parts of that
Yeah.
where it would probably translate well into other things and poorly into other things too.
Yeah, like I would imagine those type of orcs would be even more brutal and violent, like even more just like barbaric, to try to kind of counter the Rakghoul savagery themselves. You're like, no, we're the most savage, we're the biggest and the greenest, not
Right.
so they have to really amp everything up. They start doing the trophy hunting even more just to kind of mimic the Rakghoul. Like, yeah.
I just imagine like an orc who's like feral but also has technology. Like he wears like the skull of a Rakghoul, and
Ooh.
he's got like plasma like guns like on his arms, or like powered weaponry and stuff. Like it'd be super
Almost
sick.
Yeah.
a predator from like Predator and
Yeah,
Alien.
Oh, there we go. That's the one.
Really cool shout out to a third party company, Puppets of War. They do some really cool orc predators. They look really sick. They do lots of cool. They
Oh,
do lots of really
Okay.
cool, distinct orc models. But orc predators, and they also have an emperor orc and orc custodes, and they all look really cool too. But definitely worth anyone who's into collecting orcs checking those out. But just all this talk of like Great Crusade and orcs and predator orcs just made me think of them.
I'm looking at them right now. Those are sick, actually.
Mhm. Nice, nice.
Yeah, they look actually like really cool. So throw a little business that way. Actually, too, in the chat, someone mentioned, I think, Wolf Dog Art, who did a bunch of Primarch orc art. They look absolutely fantastic if you Google that. Wolf Dog Art, but dog DAWG, and he did like a bunch of different Primarch orcs that, yeah, they look really cool. Like version, like Fulgrim, but as an orc.
Yeah.
Ferris Manus, but as an orc. Magnus the Red as an orc. there's a theme in his work, but they look really sick too. So shout out to
I
that
like
guy
that.
too. All right, let's get into the War of the Beast. The Beast, a brutal and cunning orc warlord, first emerged from the depths of Ulanor with a waaagh unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. His arrival heralded the slaughter of Ardamantua and nearly wiped out the entire Imperial Fist chapter. His waaagh was an engine of devastation, warping the orcs under his command into towering, savage brutes, even fiercer and more relentless than their kind usually was. With this newfound strength, the beast drove his armies through Segmentum Solar, decimating entire sectors and killing billions in his relentless push across the Imperium. The beast's strategic brilliance became evident during the Battle for Port Sanctus, where he lost an attack moon but managed to reposition another directly above Terra. His ultimate goal was clear: crush the throne world itself. The Imperium, desperate to end the beast's reign of terror, led a massive invasion of Ulanor, believing it to be his homeworld. The beast, however, outwitted the invaders, using the planet's urban sprawl to lure them into brutal kill zones. He intended to delay the Imperium long enough for his remaining attack moon to teleport to Terra and deliver the final blow. So yeah, like this is the level of technology you're talking. They are literally teleporting attack moons, which are the size of moons, and are very much just Death Stars. Like,
Yeah.
this is something else. And like to threaten Terra itself, like Terra hasn't been threatened like that since Horus.
Yeah. Yeah, no, level of technology for sure. And one quick little disclaimer just while we're interrupted. The War and the Beast, like kind of Brody's mentioned, it's a huge novel series. Like what is there, 8 or 9 books or something like that?
12 books, actually.
12, yeah. I have condensed this, believe it or not. This isn't a 12 book little section, but you know, soon TM, as we say here on Lorehammer, we'll do an episode on the War of the Beast. But very cool what kind of happens, and just seeing this level of technology and even how big the beast actually is. And yeah, carry on.
Also, sorry, just one other thing to like the whole like technology and like their sophistication. It's the first time that you ever see a orc like as not as like as a warrior. He goes there as like a negotiator.
An
He's
emissary. Yeah.
an emissary, yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Which again, it speaks to that
imagine
like intelligence and foresight of the orcs at that stage.
100%. Yeah.
Vulcan, the returned Primarch, confronted the beast in the heart of his capital, Gorkogrod. In a brutal and savage duel, Vulcan tackled the beast and both fell into a power generator, where the Primarch became infused with waaagh energy. Harnessing this raw primal power, Vulcan launched a final devastating attack, detonating the generator and seemingly obliterating both himself and the beast. Yet, the beast was not dead. He reappeared on the attack moon over Terra, revealing his true power and resilience. The Imperium responded with a ritual to counter the beast's waaagh, culminating in a second invasion of Ulanor. In the aftermath of the beast's death, after a brutal ritual by the Sisters of Silence and a final assault by Courland, a new and even more powerful orc warlord emerged, revealing the true nature of the beast. There were 6 beasts, each a prime orc, commanding their own WAAAGH, with one identified as the Beast of Beasts. The final battle for Ulanor was a chaotic bloodbath, with one beast slain by a psychic ritual. But the true leader, the Beast, was not so easily defeated. It took a century-long crusade by the Imperium, led by Maximus Thane, to finish what had begun. The Beast's WAAAGH crumbled in his death, but the scars of his rampage remained long after, a testament to the brutal power of the Prime Orks. Plot spoilers for anyone that hasn't read the book yet.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oops.
Also, Maximus Thane is like the best 40k name ever.
Yeah, pretty good. Biggest Stickus McGee over there, Maximus Thane. Yeah, this great name.
Yeah.
It's cool that this is kind of a legacy of Ulanor, this planet. That huge empire that we just talked about. The orcs came right back from there, so that almost adds to their they must have been so close to becoming Prime Orks, and then the Emperor came in and Horus came in, stomped them out. And then there's a small resurgent, you almost see the orcs are like, holy fuck, something just wiped us out. Jump up those power levels. We need Prime Orks now to deal with this.
We need to come back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This isn't your standard threat of the galaxy.
I never thought of that, but I think you're right. Once they face off against that, the power of Prime Orks and the Emperor, that they're like, okay, we got obliterated. Now we have to come back that much stronger, that much harder. And it takes time to build up to that level, which is why you don't see them again for a long time until the 32nd millennium. And then, spoiler, Ulanor, if you listen to our Armageddon episode, is Armageddon. And the orcs are once again coming from Armageddon.
Drawn.
Well, we can all take comfort in the fact that Armageddon is now a demon world, lost partly in the warp, being infested by Khorne and Chinch. So no more orc problem there. Imperial victory. Don't worry.
Chalk that episode Imperial victory. As always, great success, guardsmen.
Great success.
Great success.
And little do you know, Mark, that they're just supercharging demon orcs for the next.
Oh, no.
Yes.
No. Thraka or Tuska the Demon Killer is going to come out of the portal next. Yeah. All right. Well, wild stuff here. Kind of just how the orcs work. That fluctuation. I feel like, whether it's intentional or we're just reading into it just worked out perfectly. You can kind of see the spikes of the evolution in their technology and their kind of prime examples with who they're fighting and when.
The cycles of violence. But
cycles of violence. Yeah. All right, we got some call-ins.
The ebb and flow
of war. Let's do a couple new people to the call-ins that are normally not around. So let's take care of them first. I think Seth will be up first. If you want to give me a nod on the screen, we can kind of get you in. All right. Hey, Seth, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Mm-hmm.
Hello. Very glad to be here. Can't believe I'm on the podcast. It's crazy. You guys, I'm sorry. You guys got me into 40K. It's wild being
I
here.
love that. Well, you can nominate for us for Warhammer Hero, and then we're even Stevens.
Oh, I will. I will. Do not worry. I am. So I was just wondering, you mentioned Krorks having super powerful weapons that were on par with Catan. You said, what do you think that is? I was joking around earlier, saying maybe they have a moon orbiting a planet in a pocket dimension that keeps going faster and faster, and sometimes they'll just open a portal and send a moon flying out at the Necrons.
Oh yes, definitely.
So maybe they have giant plasma cannons, on the big mech model. It has a giant. Haven't really looked at it. I play Leagues, of course. Glory to the Votan, but I like to imagine they have essentially just giant Titan-sized plasma cannons, and it's mounted on just a regular 10-foot Krork, which is still big, but you're mounting a Nova cannon on him.
He's got it though. He's got some muscles. I just picture the orcs have, they're fighting the Necron, and then they see the Necron regenerating, and they're like, I want to do that too. So then the Mekboys get on that. They're fighting the Necron. They see the Necron come up with teleportation, and they're like, we got to do that too. And then they come up with it.
Yeah.
I want surprise orcs.
Yeah.
Orc teleportation just being a bunch of purple orcs loaded into a giant cannon, aimed loosely at the area they're trying to do, and fire. You know, I never see it coming.
Never see it coming.
Yeah. Like it can't. Again, we don't have anything documented written down, so it's all speculation. Pretty much like let your mind just go crazy with what that could be. Like we just mentioned that during the War of the Beasts, that they did have like the equivalent of Death Star, multiple Death Star technology. So that idea of like flinging moons at places, not inconceivable. Yeah.
Right.
The Necrons were literally using star gods. Why can't the orcs have a moon grenade?
Right.
Really.
It's just a form of throwing a really big rock really hard at somebody.
Which
just on a
once again
scale.
orcs do that, so it's not crazy. But yeah,
exactly.
Right. Well, I know Jax and Jackson Fuzz are waiting. I'll get out of here, but just thank you so much for having me on. It's amazing to be here with my favorite podcast hosts. You guys, oh my God, I've spent so much money on Leagues of Votan.
That is our bad.
Don't tell your parents on us.
Horrible.
Fuck. All right, well,
It's horrible. Thank you so much.
thanks for calling in, man.
Thank you.
All right, adios. Liar, I think we'll get you up next. Liar Ork, hey, welcome to the show.
WAAAGH! Hey, boys, how's it going?
It's going good, man.
It's going good, man. How about you?
Oh, pretty good. I'm just, I love thinking about the orcs as like this great filter to all the other factions, and not even just the other factions themselves too. They just stop not necessarily stop them from becoming too powerful, but if you get too powerful, they'll start rising up. They'll start being this menace that comes after you. It's beautiful.
Yeah. It makes me wonder about other fun matchups of like what would happen if you took orcs, and we talked about the Octarius Crusade and what that would eventually turn into, the endless battle of orcs and nids and the super orcs that would be made there. There could be so many fun matchups.
Yeah, exactly. I just love orcs. They're the best.
Now that you got me thinking about it, what would just an all-out war between just orcs and Tau turn into? Would they just start taking Tau tech and like really like the Krork technology would just come full circle?
I don't think the Tau are up for it. Yeah, they're definitely not up for it.
Yeah, very generous. Yeah.
Right.
So, how do you feel about Gaz? That's something we haven't really talked about yet. Is he kind of the next evolution that's slowly starting to happen? Do you think we're going to see him reach Prime Ork status?
I really think we are. Like he's already doing that that planning ahead, that thinking of his future. Like after he got his ass kicked in Armageddon, he went ahead and said, "This is where we're lacking, boys. This is what we need." He's already started doing that. So like from there, where else can he go? How much bigger and smarter is he going to get just because of necessity? Like,
yeah,
it seems to be how orcs work.
I can't wait for 11th edition when he's the size of a knight, and then 12th edition he's the size of a warhound, and so on and so forth.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Each edition just gets a new Gaz model.
For sure.
Yeah, no, it's such a unique concept. I was like jokingly telling my wife about it earlier today. Like, yeah, it's so cool. They're so unique. They like to fight, and the more they fight, they get bigger and stronger. Depending, and she was just giving me the blank look. I fucking think it's sweet.
I've tried to like explain a lot of things about Warhammer to my wife, and like she's like kind of like blanket, like that's cool, whatever. But then I mentioned orcs and like how they work. She's like, I can get behind that. That's pretty cool, actually. And I'm like, thank you. Like, at least there's something.
I have a 12 novel series.
Yeah. I'll download it onto your Kindle right now. You can read it in between your spicy stuff.
Cool. Thanks for having me, boys.
No other thoughts or questions or comments you want to get out there?
Just fucking love you. Love Lorehammer. Anyone who's not on the Patreon, get to it. What's wrong with you? Come on.
You heard it from Liar. He would never tell you anything but the truth.
all
Get on the
the truth.
Patreon.
Love you, boys.
Thanks for calling
Thanks.
in. Adios.
Thanks for calling, man.
All right, Jax, I don't see you on the screen. Okay, there you go. It looks like you're ready. Hey, welcome to the show.
Hey, everybody. What's up?
Oh,
Hey,
just
man.
orking about.
Freaking
Orks,
orc.
they're cool. We crumped them shiny gits. We crumped the knife ears. We crumped them humies with the power of a goddamn moon. WAAAGH.
Yeah, man. Another fun example of just orcs being kind of wherever they are, whoever they're fighting, they're just kind of gonna adapt to that, and that'd be Tuska the Demon Killer.
Right? Yeah,
He
exactly.
kind of just becomes a demon, I guess, and fights demons perpetually because that's now his thing, and he likes it.
Yeah,
Right?
gotta love the orcs. I mean, hey, whatever they believe happens.
Do I gotta start collecting orcs, Mark? God damn it. Like, why are you doing this to me? Bring me on all these orc episodes.
Oh,
I don't
man.
want orcs. I don't have time for this. I just got a crude army.
Did you? Okay. Yeah. There was actually a
It's-
question
they'll be
in
my
the
orcs.
chat by, I think it was by you, Jax, actually, saying orcs and crude and doing a little comparison rundown. So close, so similar. Cousins almost even.
Cousins. I mean, they eat everything, so they gotta be like blood
Yeah.
related or
I've
something.
been dying to do a Kroot episode. Like I'm 50 episodes back on Lorehammer and still haven't done a Kroot one. But with those new models and stuff, like they're sweet, eh, Brody?
Yeah, man. So Emma got me like just a box of like standard dudes and and then that lone speeder
Yeah.
one where they're riding like the lizard. And I was like, I put it all together. I was like, man, these models are too good. And so like on Boxing Day, I was like, I gotta go buy the big box release set.
Bye.
And just went to the local store and they had it on like 20. I got it for 24% off Boxing Day. So I was
Nice.
like, let's do it. And then now I'm like, oh no, I'm a crew guy now. I gotta buy like at least 3 more of
Yeah,
these
then you got to get
boxes.
into all
Oh
the
no, what
variations.
have
You
I
got to
done?
get the orc crude and the lizard men crude and get them all. Got to catch them all.
Right? And so like yeah, and then now I'm like, how I have to buy Tau models just to convert them into crude
Yeah, tech
like
crude.
riders and stuff like that. Oh my god. Yeah, so I'm just like it's basically just orcs, but just like bird form.
That's too funny.
But if you do a crude episode,
Okay,
I'd love it.
added to
I'd
the
love to
list.
be on. I love the crude.
The jizz head.
It's just hands.
What else you got for us, Jax? There. Do you kind of like the concept of Prime Orks and Krorks and like do you like that it's like an imperial categorization as opposed to like an actual thing, or what do you feel?
I mean, I never knew it was an imperial categorization of it, which is kind of like a little sucky because like I always thought like Prime Orks as this like huge threat, like even more than demons, because like imagine you have an orc that actually talks normally. That is some crazy shit. There's a part that I always love in the War of the Beast. So like as you said earlier, they sent orc diplomats. But like the best part about that was that the orcs, those diplomats, spoke High Gothic, and all like the human diplomats were like, "What is going on?" And then like after all the talks, the orcs were like leaving, and they like mutter like, "This is why I hate humans. They're so unsophisticated."
Yeah, when the orc is smarter than you, you're in trouble. That's when you that's when you know you skipped some grade school.
That was the word I was looking for earlier was diplomat. Yeah, and I was like, I can't. The words of a D, and I was like, I don't know where to go with it.
The delegates.
Diplomat. There you go.
So you
Delegates.
kind of like them in their own like tier then, hey, where it's like a very distinct new kind of category, almost like how Grots are a thing, Gretchen are a thing, Prime Orks are its own kind of
Yeah, I kind of like it more so as like
thing.
the final boss, like Imperial, like your basic Imperial citizen shouldn't be like, oh, good thing we don't have any Prime Orks. This should be like Grey Knights, like kill anybody who says like anything about Prime Orks, like
Yeah.
You know, I could actually see the Imperium censoring that because like how the Imperium does know that the threat of orcs exists, but they're looked on as like a bestial, like species. But when people start talking about smart orcs, now you're like, okay, that's we're gonna have to censor some of that. Can't have that rumor getting out into the public and freaking people out.
Like also too with that, like in the Beast Arises like series, that's the creation of the Death Watch, and
Yeah.
the Ordo Xenos is like created basically like in that way, becomes like an actual like Ordo, and like so everybody like I think before that, everybody was like, "Oh yeah, like they had the Death Watch to hunt down Xenos, and the Ordo Xenos is like a thing." Well, do you really think orcs would be the reason for that? No, usually you think like it's the Eldar and they're there to hunt down Tyranids and stuff like that. No, man, the orcs terrified them so much they had to get Space Marines from every chapter, and they had to dedicate a whole part of the Inquisition to it.
Yeah.
Imagine like in some random book, a little kid like picks up like an old history book, and they read the story about like these orcs fighting people on Terra. Like Abaddon, it took 13 tries. For orcs, it took like a few, and then or just one pretty much. Like you're reading through this, and it's like the orcs tricked Vulcan, the Khan, like Gilliman, Dorn with a second attack moon.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, pretty wild for sure.
Cool. Well, yeah, crazy times for the orcs back then. We got one more call in real quick that we'll try to sneak in. Jax, any closing thoughts?
One last thing is that I read this like really cool excerpt. Conrad Kurz is actually live, and he's leading a band of orcs as Krorks.
Kick, delete, mute. There we go.
Oh, wow! Christian took that upon himself to do. Wow, I didn't know you had the power.
I did it psychically.
Good man. Okay. Wow. Well done. Well done. Well, we got the next call in. Fuzz, welcome to the show. Hey.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
Good. Fun episode.
Fuzz is a literal term. I didn't realize
Right. I take my nicknames very seriously.
There you go. I love it. I was just telling before the show, I had a beard down to like here. Like I shaved like 2 days ago. I think it was the first time these guys have ever seen me without a beard.
Yeah, like the joke. My wife has never seen my chin, and probably never will.
That's fine. You don't need to show that.
My wife thought I was a chinless wonder. Was her exact words.
Yeah. So what kind of are your thoughts on the Krorks and the Prime Orks and all that kind of stuff?
I love just like expansive world building and stuff. So for me, like going back to the War in Heaven and having this kind of, you would never expect orcs to have any sort of sophisticated ancient history to them, and the fact that they do, and even they don't really know all of it, I find super interesting, and just like sort of that bioengineered beginnings of them, and kind of seeing how the way they were engineered to be used by the old ones still like trickles down into how they act today. Like, the old ones were kind of like their original war bosses, and they are the ones that ordered them around. When they were gone, the orcs devolved into the infighting, or the Krorks devolved into the infighting. Eventually, got another war boss, more infighting, and just trickled down into what they are now. But those vestiges of their bioengineering are still there. That just
can't keep a good orc down, man.
Yeah, and just like what they are is super interesting.
Yeah.
I vibe with like the whole super soldier thing. Like they are the first engineered warriors. They are the Space Marines of the past.
Yeah. They are the Space Orcs.
Yeah.
Like I wonder if there is even some of that put into seeding humanity. Like the old ones are like, well, we had this success with these super soldiers with their power armor, and somewhere buried deep in like humanity's genetic memory is the idea of super soldiers with power armor.
Yeah. Cool.
I'm just picturing the intro to Powerpuff Girls where the Organs are creating humanity. and they're sprinkling like the mind of the Eldar and the body of the orc, and yeah.
Violence, intelligence, and everything deadly.
Yeah.
Oh no, genocide leaks in.
And that's how the Emperor was made.
Oh man. Yeah, orcs, fantastic. I love every orc episode that we do. There's always just another little bit to do. Maybe the only other question I feel like we haven't brought up this episode is Gork and Mork and their potential to be, were they Krorks that maybe fled into the webway, fled into the warp? Where are we standing with these guys?
So that is a very interesting idea. Also, before I forget, WAAAGH. Just gotta get that out there. But yeah, maybe like Gork and Mork are were the last two original Krorks, and like they were the ones leading the first batch of like orcs, however many tens of thousands of years ago, hundreds of thousands of years ago, and because the orcs were developed to not be psychic, and eventually some spore had that genetic mutation in it to become psychically active, and now they're because they're the biggest and the strongest, they become worshipped as the gods of the orcs, and it just goes haywire from there. And now they're they are whatever they are, but and the orcs just so they still have them as their gods.
Yeah, it's a fun thought.
I'll take you up one step farther on that ladder there, Fuzz. What if Gork and Mork are old ones, just like the Elder Pantheon? All the ancient gods.
Okay.
Oh yeah, like what if Gork and Mork are the old ones that created the Krorks?
Makes you think.
Ooh, I like that. Oh man. Right.
Makes you think. Makes you think like an orc.
They're just the refrigerated orcs, the Krorks that were in the lab for the old ones, and they've just got like a button that says "Speak to all." Like it's like go hit that thing.
All very great plausible theories.
Right. And I was thinking with Prime Orks, like these days, there's actually even the potential for them and like orcs as a species to surpass what Krorks were, because now they still have the physical body, the aptitude for building weapons of war, but now they've got psychers too. So imagine you have a Krork in their power armor with these devastating weapons, and now they can shoot lightning out of their hands. If it gets to that point.
I like it. Yeah, it'll be interesting to definitely see, like, we've seen a big battle between the orcs and the nids and seen what happened. It would be interesting to see another big kind of campaign between the orcs and the Necron and see if we get some more Krorks popping up, that, oh fuck, that's a lot of technology, amp up, dial that technology dial, Mekboys. Let's get after it.
Has there been anything in any of the books where like the Necrons have encountered the orcs and make some sort of comment about like, oh, you're not what you used to be, they're like kind of a shadow of what they were when we fought them in the past?
Oh yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, no, I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm not saying that's not true.
Like if it doesn't exist, I want it to. Like,
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Start writing that novel, like I'll read it.
Right, yeah, you want like was it Emotech you guys just did? Or just any of the like the high ranking Necrons fight against the orcs and be like, oh, I remember when these guys used to be a problem. Thank God they got worse.
Yeah, no kidding, eh? These guys used to be 50 feet. Now they're just
Trays in the Infinite has like a Krork to orc like scale. Like
oh man, that'd be
don't do drugs.
Yeah.
Your brain on drugs. It shows Monday Ork. Terrible. Yeah.
Right.
Cool, Fuzz. Any other thoughts before we call this one?
No, man. I appreciate having me on. A great episode. Everyone, join the Discord, join the Patreon, join the Imperial Tithe. Do it all.
Get after it. You heard the man. You know, Lorehammer has people everywhere, including Fuzz and the other caller. And so if you don't contribute, we'll break your knees. I got people everywhere. Thanks, Fuzz.
No problem.
Nothing like a good threat to get people on your side.
Right.
Well, what a fun episode, boys. We'll do the quick little wrap up and call her a day. Shout outs and whatever. If you like listening to me read lore, I will read your homebrew lore. You guys can write that story that we want to hear. Go check out Lorehammer Listen to Lore podcast, and you can email lorehammerpodcast@gmail.com, and you can submit your lore. So go check out Lorehammer Listen to Lore.
Yeah, and if you like the Star Wars universe at all, come listen to me and Jordan take shots at Disney and talk about the wonderful world of Star Wars as it used to be before the big purchase.
The time of old in the galaxy far, far away.
I didn't mention the actual name of it, but the Star Lores podcast. Lores as in like Lorehammer, lore, L.
Oh.
I know it like when you say it, it just sounds like Star Wars again, but it's different. That was the point. But in hindsight, when you're doing mostly audio, I can see.
You were hoping to get those typo clicks where somebody accidentally spells the wrong thing and they find you.
Hashtag marketing.
I did the same thing. I hear you.
Right.
Go check out that podcast. Brody, do you have anything that you want to shout out, or just like yourself?
Sure.
You're a cool guy. I'd shout you out.
I am on the Discord a little bit, so if you guys are on there, you want to say hi, no problems there. I'm also on Instagram. I have like my own little hobby Instagram that I share models on and everything. It's dwarven.horde, HORDE.minis. So Dwarven Horde Minis.
I was thinking a different kind of horde. WHORE.
Yeah, different kind of horde.
I'm still Googling it. Don't get me wrong. I'm Googling both sites.
Yeah, but Dwarven Horde Minis is me on Instagram. And yeah, go check me out. I got a couple things on there. It's surprisingly not a lot of dwarven stuff.
Poorly named, but yeah.
Poorly named, but I thought it was a good name, so I was like, hell yeah! And I thought I was going to do more.
At least it doesn't have lore in it. So
yeah, no lore, no, just Dwarven Horde. So yeah, check me out there if you want to, and go from there.
Sweet. And final thing is Patreon. Go join the Patreon. No new members since the last day I recorded a couple days ago, but definitely go join. It's been growing. We've reached that point where we're doing some contests on the Discord, which has been very nice. So definitely go join the Patreon. Well, boys, Brody, Christian, thank you so much for coming on me with this Krork to Prime Ork journey, and we'll see you boys on the next one.
See you later.
See you on the next episode.